light worming through, then disappearing. "Frankie!" his mother cried from the world above. Water filled him to bursting. He kicked and thrashed until there was no air and no up. He was sinking like any creature taken by the sea. He closed his eyes. Then a tug on his arm, and he was dredged up, back up between parted logs and into the light, sputtering into the air. "Namu Amida Butsu, Namu Amida Butsu," babbled Momoi, half asleep at his side, prayer beads spilling between her fingers. "Mama!" Frankie gagged and woke. His brother Yas stirred beside him in the moonlight, but slept on. Aki, Yas's twin, along with their sisters Julia and Augusta, slept in another bed. Their father, Taiji, lay in another across the room. The ocean swell beneath them lulled their floating house. How Frankie ached all over. His ribs, his chest, his head, his throat, even his fingers and toes. At dawn, he watched through the window as Yas and their father stepped onto the logs tethered outside their house. Without a word, they rolled the timbers beneath their feet, poles held easily across their chests, and glided effortlessly away, like Frankie never could. How did it feel, Frankie had to wonder. That sureness. Taiji's shadow always at his back, strong and tall. When they reached the dense cluster of logs in the middle of the inlet, they poked and pushed with their poles while hopping from one trunk to another, urging the swarm toward the sawmill for skinning and slicing. Frankie could only lie back in his bed, every finger bandaged, his ribs bound, his breath wheezing through bruised passages. Frankie had nearly been a goner. But no, not Yas. He'd roar when he rolled the biggest log faster than anyone. "I rode the Colossus!" The girls scrambled after him, crying, "No!" Others might go down like deadheads, like squashed jellyfish. But Yas would laugh, drunk from the sea. If only Yas would go down just once. Frankie couldn't help wish it. Just once. Momoi sat beside him. She'd been brewing sake, and he smelled the burnt sweetness amid the ocean salt. If only she would hold him like she did when he was little. If only to lift him from here to there. She raised a bottle to the window to let the early morning sunlight glance through. "You see, Frankie?" She tipped the bottle back and forth. Green, blue, and white light swilled within. "This is how we came across the ocean. In giant ships riding giant waves. Before you were born." When he opened his eyes next, the house was dark. He felt his mother there, smelled her there, as if the two of them were below decks of the giant ship on its long journey, instead of drifting in their floating house. Momoi leaned in with her hot breath, words pouring like lava in his ear. "One night, a man fell into the Sea of Japan, down into the deep, dark water." Frankie's aches flared and burned with cold anew. "Then what?" he asked, though of course he knew the story. "Shush." His mother's eyes widened, her thick brows arching in the faint moonlight. She hunched her shoulders and drew up her arms. "The priest swept down into the water, his robes like wings." She sighed, shoulders drooping, eyes narrowing. It always exhausted her telling this part, as if she'd rescued the man herself. Frankie shivered and tingled. "And then? The priest crossed to the other side and brought him back." She stared so hard at Frankie that he had to look away. "Did you?" "What, Mama?" "Did you cross to the other side?" On his way out, Taiji gazed down at Frankie with a pitying shake of his head. One by one, Yas and the girls passed by his bed and did the same. Only Aki lingered to give him a gentle squeeze and kind eye. "Bye, Frankie," they called from outside, voices fading as they rowed to shore for school. His mother settled in beside him, ready to tell another story, the one about the rich widow and her son and daughter. The widow had heard of the priest and the miracles he'd performed, of walking on fire, purging dark.